Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Team Joe Talks. I'm excited to chat this evening with Shepard Fairey, and let's just see if he has requested to join. Sorry, we were sort of in. If you're familiar with that Spider-Man meme where he's like pointing at himself, Shepard and I were very confused about who was going live first. So we've just been like sitting here waiting, and then I finally realized I should just send him a message. So here we go. Thanks if you've been waiting. Hey,
Hey, Chasten, how are you?
good. How are you? That's
Sorry,
funny. We've been sitting here just staring.
yeah, the confusion. I was like, maybe he's grabbing a cup of coffee. But it's all good. We're on now. But I apologize to anyone who was sitting around waiting. But hey, it's quarantine time, right? So I guess people have maybe a little more free time than usual. But I don't even waste the luxurious quarantine time in anyone. But where are you? How are you?
I'm good. I'm home in South Bend, and honestly, the delay gives Peter a little bit more time to make dinner. He's on dinner duty this evening, which is not a normal thing, so he might need an extra minute or two. Where are you at?
I'm in my design studio in Los Angeles in Echo Park near Dodger Stadium. I've been lucky that I can do what I do remotely from home or from my office. Most of my staff is
No.
just working from home, but because we're designers and we're digital, we can do
Yeah.
that. It's actually meant that I have a lot of time without as many meetings and phone calls where I can work on a lot of work. So I've been getting a lot of artwork done, a lot of stuff for the upcoming election around getting people out to vote.
Great.
How about you? What are you focusing on?
So came home off the campaign and focused on the book. Now the book's done. It's coming out in September, and honestly, Peter and I are trying to do as much as we can to elect Joe this fall. So that's been a huge portion of our work, which I'm excited to do. And I'm excited to have this Team Joe chat with you. And I love that you're an artist. You know, I've talked a lot about the arts on the campaign trail, and I'm excited to see how President Biden will usher in a new era for the arts and the humanities in our country. I mean, what are you hopeful for as it relates to the arts?
Well, of course, I'm a believer that the arts make a big difference in people's lives. I think they also make a big difference economically. There have been studies that
Yeah.
show every dollar invested in the arts, there's an $8 return. I mean,
Yeah.
one of the things the U.S. still exports, it's culture, and that's driven by creativity, not just fine art, but all the different arts. And so I think that Joe Biden recognizes that and sees it as valuable from the sense of just nurturing humanity, but also that there's no downside, there's only upside economically too. Of course, I'm excited about that because I use art to comment on social issues I care about. It's sort of my own personal therapy. But really, the way I apply my art to social justice, things like race, climate change, the need for campaign finance reform, I'm really happy that that Joe Biden is in step with a lot of my views on those things, and I've been following his evolution, well, in the wider world, but of course during this campaign, and seeing the depth of explanation of his policy positions on his website now. I mean, there's 40 different things that he goes into great detail on that are all things I care about. So I'm really happy to see that. If you go over to Trump's website, there's like 6 paragraphs that say nothing except for some rhetoric that's actually easy to argue against, and no substance at all. So
Yeah.
really, the voice couldn't be more clear.
Oh, absolutely. I saw a couple people commenting in the comment section. You know, there's some art teachers here and how arts save lives. And I know you've seen that reflected in your work and your activism, how when people feel like they have an outlet that sees them and understands them, or that just allows them to express themselves or feel like they belong in a community, it truly saves lives. I'm really excited for a Secretary of Education who believes in public education, but who also understands the importance of arts education as well. Also really interested in how President Biden, Dr. Biden, Kamala, and Doug, they'll all be beacons for hope for many of the LGBTQ Americans in this country who are waiting for the White House to return to a symbol of hope and community and belonging. What do you make about that, and what do you hope to see happen in a Biden administration?
Well, of course, I was really proud of Joe Biden for being a supporter of marriage equality, back even when Obama was waffling, and I think he was a critical factor in that, that issue reaching the ultimate success that it did. Obviously, there's hundreds of thousands of activists and people pushing, but I think that Joe Biden was on the right side of that issue. And I think he'll just take that further. But you really, you're living it. So you should tell me what you think is sort of most valuable in how LGBTQ rights have progressed to where they are, and how that model can actually be a source of inspiration for any number of issues, and what you want to see.
Oh, sure. Well, I think, the arts saved my life when I was a kid. And that's why I love talking with artists, because art is just where I came alive. It's where I felt like I belonged. I found a voice there. And that's why arts education to me is also so important, because I truly believe it is a life-saving outlet for many people. When I was out on the campaign trail for Pete's campaign, I met many young people who found refuge in the arts. And sometimes the drama teacher, the music teacher, was the only person they felt like they had in their life who understood them, and where they felt that they could be safe and be themselves. So one, I think we can do a lot for the LGBTQ community and LGBTQ youth by making sure we have a strong arts education culture in this country. I also think Joe Biden understands the importance of making sure we're focusing on those who are the most marginalized, even in our own community. So in the LGBTQ community, that's taking on the damage that is being done to our community, especially to trans women of color. It starts with naming that, and then it's followed up by strong policy protecting kids in schools, in their own families, in their communities. And I want kids in this country to look up to the White House and just know that the president, the first lady, the vice president, the second gentleman, they're all there because they're fighting for us. They believe in us and they love us. And that just starts with leadership. That's what we've been missing so much in this country, is true leadership. And whether it's violence against Black trans women, navigating what it is like to be a queer person in this country is just harder when you don't have a leader in the White House. And so I just look forward to Joe Biden, restoring the soul of the nation, like he talks about, just getting in there and being a voice for reason and good. What is something else that you are hoping, once we actually restore leadership to the White House? What is something that you would think will be refreshing to see come out of that administration?
Well, the things you're talking about, I guess, the term intersectional is quite popular these days, and it should be, because when I look at humanity and I look at the Earth, the idea of ecosystem is in both zones. So how humanity relates to each other, everyone is interdependent. We all actually need each other. There's no us versus them. There's just us. But also there's self. And so looking at the future of humanity, you also have to look at the future of the planet. It's not just humanity, but all species and inhabitability. So the fact that that Joe Biden was early on legislation around global warming back in the 80s, and that he's I know going to be good on that issue, and understands also climate justice as an issue that affects people of color and lower income people disproportionately, that he's gonna understand that all of those things need to be considered simultaneously. And so I've been making a lot of work about environmental destruction and climate change for since the mid 2000s, really since An Inconvenient Truth came out, and I started to do a lot more research and realized that, you know, things like immigration and you know, hostility in other regions, all of that's going to be exacerbated by climate change. And so for all those people that care, you know, about an issue that they don't see related to climate change, a closer look might make them realize that we need to move on climate for so many different issues. Yes. And so, you know, and I consider myself an American, but a world citizen. And when I look at our role as leaders in the world to make sure that other people in other parts of the world, other nations, aren't suffering because of our actions or inaction, yeah. I know that Joe Biden is going to understand the moral weight of what we're dealing with climate change.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you can hear Buddy down there, but sounds like he's giving Peter a run for his money. It must be dinner time. I'm wondering, you know, politics is so personal, and something I talk a lot about is how politics isn't just, you know, a hobby or an interest or something we pay attention to because it matters so much. It's how it shapes us, you know, and politics for me for a long time was just a thing that happened to me. I never considered myself political and wasn't really interested in it, especially as a, you know, young gay kid in Northern Michigan. I felt like politicians didn't really care about me. And I saw that reflected so often on the campaign trail, how politics has just shaped people. It's just what has happened to them, you know, and most often in negative ways. I'm wondering, you know, I'm going to ask you, you know, who you'll be thinking about when you vote. And I ask that because I know I'll be thinking about my mother, who I've talked very openly about her battle with cancer. I'm thinking about my students and what it will mean to actually have a strong education system in this country, someone who actually believes in public education. I'm thinking of every single young person who just feels left out, who you know, looks up to Washington and just feels like no one there gets them. Who will you be thinking about when you cast your vote this fall?
Well, I'll be thinking, of course, about my own daughters who are 12 and 15, but really I know how fortunate they are because you know, against all odds, I've done okay in my life as an artist. But I also want them to not feel in any way limited by their gender, to just be in a world that that has respect for all human beings. But that applies to everyone. I want people to be free to be who they are, to have equal access to opportunity, to have you know, the equal dignity and humanity, both in terms of the culture we create and under the law. And I think that you know, all the aspirations that were laid out by the founders of the nation that have you know, not been achieved, that looking back at that and saying, if 200 plus years ago these were the objectives, you know, and we still have a long way to go, like what can we do now? So I just want people in place that are looking to the future, not saying make America great again, because it was never as great as it should be.
Yeah. Right. No, absolutely. And I think, you know, you leave out a lot of marginalized communities when you say make America great again. Like you said, it was never great for many people in this country. You know, before we wrap up, I do want to encourage, I think maybe we can take some rapid fire questions from the comment section. So I'll encourage everyone to maybe drop a couple questions in there. I'll try to keep my eye on that. And before we go, Shepard, I'm just wondering, you have found an interesting way to use something that you love to create change. I don't think maybe artists especially are encouraged to make change. I think it is impressive what you have done. Artists are so great at finding their voice and pushing the political boundaries, etc. But it's not something that is like encouraged, especially with funding, right, in our country. It's not something that is often backed up with support, either financially or just morally. But you've done such a great job of using your platform, using your talents and art to affect change. I'm wondering, if you had advice for young people who are trying to figure out how to use their voice and make change, what advice would you give to them?
Well, my advice is for them to believe that their voice matters, and they can use that in a lot of ways. They definitely need to vote, but I see a lot of people saying, oh, well, I don't think that it's going to change anything. Well, if you don't, certainly won't, and you actually leave your in the hands of people who may not have your best interest in mind. But also, I think that getting out in the streets like people did after George Floyd was murdered and Breonna Taylor was murdered, and letting people know, hey, this is not right what we're seeing, and we're willing to use our time and our energy to say we want something different. That's valuable. Also, how people spend their money. There's a lot that that you can say politically with who you support financially. Do you believe in the culture of the companies that you support, or do you not? And do you do enough research? So doing enough research to vote properly and to spend your money properly actually gives you a ton of power.
Yeah, no, I agree. I love that. I love that you brought that up. I hope everyone also, during COVID right now, is trying to keep their money local, supporting as many local businesses as possible. Also supporting the Postal Service. Did you ever believe that as adults we would have to be talking about why the Postal Service mattered? But please go out there and support a local business and buy some stamps. I saw a question come through. It said, what brought you joy today? So maybe it's a good way to wrap up. I know sometimes when we have these conversations, it can be like a downward spiral conversation, right? It seems so dark, it seems bleak. But the thing that brings me joy right now is getting to spend more time with my dogs and my husband. We just took the dogs for a long walk, and we're just so lucky. We're so lucky to have this roof over our heads and this food that's being prepared for dinner and this time together. And we just have to remember, like you said, it is so important that we realize our voice, has weight and that it matters, and that perhaps you're not just voting for yourself. You're voting for all of the other people who have either been disenfranchised or don't have a voice. You're voting for millions of other Americans who are depending on you. That's why we share our personal stories. That's why politics matters so much to us. But for the one of us, there are millions of other people out there who have been denied a voice, who are counting on us to get this right. I think it was David Sedaris who had that really funny metaphor about the state of this election is like the flight attendant asking you if you wanted shards of glass or chicken, and to say that you weren't sure who you were voting for was to ask how the chicken's cooked. It's so clear the choice that we have to make this fall, because it is restoring the soul of the nation, and it's getting somebody in there who's a true leader. That's where I sit. I'll end with you. What brought you joy today, and what are your final thoughts?
Well, it's funny you brought up the dogs. My children bring me joy, sometimes frustration. My dogs almost always bring me nothing but... Yeah, there we go.
Thank you, buddy.
And but also, I worked on a project with a bunch of other artists, and it was very inspiring that so many artists came together for a project called Artist Band Together. That's bandanas with art on them, and they can be used, coat masks or standalone art pieces, or post-pandemic as fashion things. But it's all to raise money for voter registration organizations, Woke Vote, Mi Gente, and Rise. So, for me, it brought me joy to see that project launch, and to know that the arts can be doing something for democracy, and that I can, play a small role in that, and that there's unity. that the arts, which can sometimes be very self-absorbed, that artists were willing to come together and do something very generous for the sake of the nation. So
yeah. Well, I hope you continue finding joy throughout all this. I hope you keep using your voice and your talents to create change and good. It was great chatting with you. I hope everyone that's following us make sure that they follow Joe Biden as well. And please text the word JOIN to 30330. I almost said the Pete number, so I had to make sure I said that right. Please text the word JOIN to 30330. Make sure you're signed up for texts. Make sure you get some merch. I just got a cool shirt. Check this out. I really, really love this. You got to check out the merch shop. Tweet less, listen more. Isn't that great?
Yep, that's great.
I can't wait to wear that.
Bye.
So thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining us, Shepard. It's so nice chatting with you.
Great to chat with you too. Give your husband a hello for me. You know how much of a fan I am.
I will, absolutely. We'll see how dinner went. So we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.